Ma panin eestikeelset selle jutluse nimeks nõtrusest tugevaks. Inglise keeleks see siis kõlaks from weakness to strength. Maybe you thought, or you can think now, what are your weaknesses? Or what are your most, weakest areas in your life? What could they be? Some of us are maybe a bit shy, but some of us are maybe too outspoken. Some of us could be, you easily, remember things, but that, leads you to worry. But then some people don't, remember things. They just easily, don't remember. Like some of us can be just fearful, but some of us can run ahead of God and do things, in their own strength and not do it in God's strength. So these can be our weaknesses, but the list is long. Everyone will have one, I'm sure. And when we have weaknesses, I don't know about you, but it seems to be that there's like two sides of, I don't know if it's personality or just people that some kind of just completely ignore that they have weaknesses and just like, oh, well, I don't have any problems, I just go along with, what I have and, I'm just happy with it, and just completely ignore the fact that they have weaknesses. And some people are more like, well, I'm weak, I can't do it, so I'm just happy to stay weak and never work on or even think about these issues either. So, I think we all can agree we have weaknesses here. If we get really, outspoken, we can start speaking about each other's weaknesses. I think that'll be really easy to point out others' weaknesses. But maybe let's leave that for another time. So from weakness to strength, what does this concept really mean? Like from weakness to strength. I think, isn't it kind of like an oxymoron? Like weakness and strength? I think one of the preachers one time said to me, he's like, so how can you be humble and vapper on eesti keeles, courageous at the same time? How can you be humble and courageous? It's kind of like that, humble and courageous. Like how can this be? Like weakness to strength. I think in a world, there could be. I don't know about you, but you hear about this all the time that if you're an athlete and you're training for Olympics, you find out your weaknesses and you get a coach and you really work on those weaknesses like all the time. You're trying to get, these areas better in your life that are weak. You're constantly working on hours and days and months or if you have a business, it's the same concept. Like you lay out like what's your strengths in the business, and then you work on the weaknesses. It's kind of like you work on these things continuously. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but that's not exactly what we're talking about here. It's from weakness to strength. And I don't know if you know this term. I can tell you about it later where it comes from, but. This is, I think this is not a world's concept. This is a God concept, from weakness to strength. We don't have to be proud. We don't have to be haughty or selfish or, I can stand on my own 2 feet. That's not what we're talking about. Not to say that we have to be depressed and, self-absorbed and weak as Christians, but this is not this is not like a world's concept. It's not, for the young people is, I have to be popular, I have to be cool, I have to be, wearing, top-notch things or do this, fashionable things at the moment, then I can be strong, then I can just, be accepted by everyone, this, maybe when you get over 40 or maybe 50, like Eugene, like he doesn't really care about that too much anymore. But when you're young, that's like the main thing, So I kind of thought about in my head, what is, if I think about from weakness to strength, what is the person that just straight comes to my mind if I think about a person like that in the world. You can't say who that is because you've seen the photo already. But for all of you other people, I'm not going to say his name, but I'll just give you a bit of a background story of him, and then you're trying to guess who that person is. And when I think from weakness to strength, I think of that man. I think most of you should know him. So let's try this out. So he was born in Australia, in Melbourne. He was actually born to this Yugoslavian, Serbian refugee couple in Melbourne. They were refugees. And so they were first like a Serbian Orthodox, but then they became the followers of Jesus. His parents, this person's parents. Then this man was born obviously in Australia, like I said, and he was born with a syndrome called tetra amelia syndrome, which means it's like a very rare, I don't know, puue, English scales, like disorder, disability or disorder. But we can say it was his weakness, definitely was his weakness. So, but the syndrome means you're born without legs and without arms. Maybe that gives a bit of a hint. So, according to this man's own words, his mother, when he was born, did not want to hold him. Like he looked so I can imagine the shock coming out of the mother's womb of a baby without having arms or legs. So the mother didn't want to. So the parents left him at the hospital after the birth. Pretty sad. So when he was, younger, he obviously, despite of he actually wasn't allowed in school, so he still went to school, and he was obviously bullied. So he wanted to kill himself. He wanted to throw himself in a bath and just drown himself. So, talking about a man having a weakness. So when he was 17, he started giving, motivational speeches. And talking about Christianity and evangelism in his schools. So about 21, he finished in Griffith University had a bachelor's degree in commerce. So, and now, if we know him, so this is the man. You know who he is, right? So Nick Vujicic, what a guy, you know what I mean? So that was when he was young, a little boy on the beach, and now that's what he is now. So it has this little toe, I think everyone knows. He has like this little 1 foot, and the toe was webbed, when it was born, and it was operated to cut, into two, so he can use it for riding, walking, jumping, swimming. He gets on a snowboard. You think this dude, talking about having a real difficulty in life, in birth when you're born, to become a great man of God, we should say. Obviously, I think it was a couple of years ago he was here in Ola Vista. So he calls his little toes chicken drumsticks. It's that guy has a sense of humor, you know what I mean? I think that's great. It's still you can, his parents obviously taught him to be, look at the bright side of life rather than, be negative about, his consequences. So, anyway, talking about, people's weaknesses turned into strengths. So, if I think of also, because, obviously we have talking about Christianity, think of Jesus. Just like last week we talked about Jesus, born in a manger. He was born in a little trough, eating trough of animals. talking about, weakness. This is a weak little vulnerable baby. You know what I mean? Like it's a great weakness, and just harmless and innocent, and even if you think about the death on a cross, he was completely weak. He was like a horrible way to die, but it was just a weakness of a man. Aga lähme nüüd sinna piiblitegelase juurde, kellest ma tahan teile täna tegelikult rääkida. Me teeme samamoodi, et ma alguses ei ütle teile, et kes see tegelikult on, sina jälle tead. Aga oli üks mees. There was a man born in Israel. And he born in a time where there was no, every man did right what was his own eyes. He was born in a time where Israel, and particularly his people, were hiding in the caves. He was born of a time where Midianites, Amalekites, and the people from the morning came and attacked him 7 years a row. He was a man who was born to a parent, or at least a father, who was an idol worshipper. He worshipped Baal. Who was this man? And this man, and that just came to my thought there, that doesn't matter what our parents are. Is kind of a sign point. It doesn't matter what your parents believe. If your parents have a Baal in their home, or they have a Buddha statue in their home, or they're Christians, or whoever your parents are, that doesn't make us believe exactly what they believe. We should have our independent faith in God Himself. And this man had a meeting with God Himself personally. He was a young man. He had parents. He lived in his parents' home, but he believed personally. He had a personal faith. He had a personal, encounter with God Himself. Okay, and so when you meet him, he built an altar, and he called it. I don't know in English now, but he called it. I think it was Jehovah Shalom. I think was the name of it. Anybody know who I'm talking about? Not yet? Okay. I'll keep going. So I'm just thinking, personally, we need to know that we are walking with God, that we have a personal faith with God. I just thought about, this illustration of the cross being the bridge. For Jesus, the cross were death, but for us, it's life. Either we walk and we have that bridge, that cross over to the other side with God, or we're going to fall into the ditch. We're going to fall and keep falling and forever falling to eternity in hell. We need God. We need that cross. We need to walk across to God to the other side. So this man had the meeting with God. And so after he finished his meeting, so like I said, he built an altar, but he also brought something to God and made a sacrifice. He brought and put a sacrifice on the altar for God. And then God Himself gave him a mission. He said, now, Gideon. It's Gideon. You know Gideon. So now, Gideon, I want you to go to your father's house, take a bullock, take actually two, and take down the idols at your father's house, so which was Baal and also was like this cove. He said, smash it down and take bullocks from his dad's house and build an altar and just sacrifice to me. Well, hang on a second. I don't know about you, but it's just met God and you gave him like a pretty big task. If you think of it, I think it's a pretty big task, But he did it. He took servants and he went and did it. I think that's amazing. It took courage. It definitely took courage. But we see his first weakness while he did it. He did it in a way that he did it at night, so no one can see it. So that's the first time that's actually the second time, but we see his weakness, that he was scared. He was scared of his dad. He was scared of what the village would say. I mean, we know later that, his dad comes along and says, oh, whoever this Baal guy was, well, if he wants to, punish my son, well, let him punish him. So his dad kind of turns back from, believing Baal as well. I mean, illustration for us is too, like I thought about it, that, we look at the Old Testament and we look at it like, oh, well, this is for, all these Israelites, they're getting all these things wrong and they worship all these different idols and, but I think we're no different. We can easily slip into idol worship. I know I do, I'll be honest. Easily I can get to the point where, oh, this is okay now. Like it wasn't before, but I didn't watch this before, but I just have a watch of it now, like it's fine. Or, what I don't know what it is for you. But we can easily slip back to idolatry. And that's what was Israelites' sin. That's what God wanted to do in their lives, to actually purge out that sin, and then they went on to victory. That was the start of a victorious Christian life, is to purge out evil or, idols in our lives. It's a path to a victorious Christian life. It is a battle, I get it. We battle every day, but that is the start of it. And that's the start for me. So, Gideon, a good man, but a fearful man. So, now Gideon, maybe we should read a little bit of it. Now Gideon gets even a bigger. So that was, if you want to go to Judges 6 and 7. If we go to 6. And because I've kind of told you all the beginning of it already, let's read from 6 and we go, I think 36, but a little bit before. Let's go to 33. I'll just read it in Estonian and we'll read it to the end of the chapter. Kõik midjanlased, amelikid ja hommikumaalased olid kogunenud, üle jõe tulnud ja Iisraeli olgu leeri üles löönud. Aga issanda vaim täitis Gideoni. Ta puhus sarve ja abieserlased hüüti tema jälle järgnema. Ja ta läkitas käskjalgu kogu Manassesse ja ka nemad hüüti temale järgnema. Ta läkitas käskjalgu Aaserisse, Sebulonisse, Naftaalisse ja need tulid üles teiste vastu. Ja Gideon ütles Jumalale, kas sa tahad minu käe läbi Iisraeli päästa, nagu sa oled öelnud? Siis vaata, ma panen need niidetud villad rahepõrandale. Kui kaste tuleb ainult nende villade peale, aga kogu maapind jääb kuivaks, siis ma tean, et sa Iisraeli minu käe läbi päästad, nagu sa oled öelnud. Ja nõnda sündis, kui ta järgmisel hommikul vara üles tõusis ja villu vajutas, siis ta pigistas villadest kaste välja, kausitäie vett. Aga Gideon ütles Jumalale, ärgu sütigu su viha põlema minu vastu, et ma veel kord räägin. Luba, ma katsun veel kord villadega. Lase nüüd ainult villad kuivaks jääda, aga kogu maapinnal olgu kaste. Jumal tegi sel ööl nõnda. Ainult villad jäid kuivaks, aga kogu maapinnal oli kaste. So I just thought about, okay, the call is to battle. Let's go, like he's sounding the trumpet, he's getting all the people together. You'd be like, in a normal, I don't know, like a scene would be like, yeah, here goes Gideon, takes a big sword and just marches to the army, I don't know, let's take the donkeys or the horses or whoever, yeah, and then he's Gideon with a sword, smiting the biggest man, of the Midianites and, kills him, and it's like, wait a minute, what happened? You know what I mean? Like the guy doubts. He goes straight in doubt. He goes like, oh, God, did you really tell me that before, that I'm going to be the guy who rescues us out of the Midianites? And not once, but twice, he doubts. I don't know, like I don't know about you, but I love the Bible because it writes things in a way that they really are. You know, it writes things like, this was an imperfect human being. He had a weakness. He writes it as it is. Like, it doesn't say, you know, like portrays him as this big conqueror that when he wasn't. He makes him as he is. And I think that's how God views us. He knows exactly how we are. You know, I don't know all of your weaknesses. I don't want to know. Honestly, I'll probably look at you in a very different way if I knew all your weaknesses. And you probably look differently mine too. But when God looks at us, he kind of works and knows our weaknesses and does what he does with us. How you know, we see later how he deals with people that he knows they have weaknesses. He deals with him. He doesn't show him and say, "Oh, you Gideon, I just go away. I just don't want to deal with you. I'd pick another man." He didn't say that. He was happy to work with him. He was happy to keep approving him and telling him that, no, this is your call. Even through your weakness, this is what you're supposed to do. Just keep doing it. Just keep going. Don't think, oh, give up now because you doubted. No, he doesn't say that. He just encourages him. And I hope that's encouragement to you because, it is to me because I know I fail. But God works with, I'm not talking about sin, but just like God works with our weaknesses. He knows what our weaknesses are and he works with them. He puts it in a light of like, I'll help you. I'll pull you along. And I think that's encouraging. I think of a verse in Psalms 103, 13 to 14. Like as a father pities his children, so the Lord pitieth them that fear him. For he knoweth our frame, he remembereth that we are dust. I mean, if we know that we are dust, then it's okay, we know ourselves that we're dust, but what about if we look at each other like that? Like God knows that we're dust and we came out of dust. If I work with other people, I don't know, even like my children or with my brothers or us here, I always want to see like, oh, why can things be better? Why can things be this? Why can things be that? But our Father in heaven, he looks at us and pities us and shows us with his compassion and long suffering and brings us along. And I think I don't know about you, but I think that's encouraging. So, our hero, Gideon, got his approval. God stamped it on the fleece. He stamped it. He said, yep, you're good to go. So he goes, in chapter 7 we go. And so he gets up early and he gathers all the people together. Let's read a couple of verses here, chapter 7. Ja Jerubbaal, ma ei tea, Jerubbaal, English, mis oli Gideoni teine nimi, see on Gideon, tõusis vara üles, samuti kogu rahvas, kes oli koos temaga, ja nad lõid leeri üles Haarodi allika juurde. Midjanlaste leer jäi tema põhjast põhja poole, alates Moore mäeküngast tasandikul. Ja issand ütles Gideonile, sinuga on kaasas liiga palju rahvast, et võiksin anda midjanlastele nende kätte, et Iisrael ei hakkaks kiitlema minu ees, öeldes, mu oma käsi päästis minu. Okay, here's the guy who doubts. He just like doubted twice. And then he goes to the battle, and then God says, too many. I don't know if you know the odds, but there was 120,000 of Midianites and Ammonites and the people from the morning. There was about 32,000 of the Israelites. You know what the odds are? 1 to 4. One Israelite to 4 of them. It's not a good odds. God said, nope, that's not good odds. let's make it fewer odds. I don't know, for a doubting man, he'd be like, okay. And so he gives the command and says, okay, the ones just go out and tell him, whoever's fearful, let him go home. Okay, I'll go, God. Whoever's fearful, go home. So they go home. So how many goes home? 20,000. You'd be like, okay, we just got about, 10,300 left. Okay, God. Like, I don't know about you, but I'll be like, I don't know if this going to happen. And he's like, let's read on. Number 4. Ja issand ütles Gideonile, rahvast on veelgi palju. Vii nad alla vee juurde, siis ma katsun nad seal läbi sinu jaoks. So he's like, too many. It's too many. Talking about putting the weak man in a more weaker position. What do you think? In the battle odds, as if we're talking about battle, it's not going to be, great military strategy. Putting less and less men into the battlefront. But see, that wasn't God's plan. That's not God's plan. And here even God says he's trying out those men, those 10,000 men who's soon going to go as well. And it's kind of like, I quoted you this book last week about this Don Richardson from the Peace Child. There's a scene there where it's a little bit different story, but basically the guy's on a canoe, he's in this mountainous Urianjara, and he's a local guy, and they had a fear that they couldn't even, drink out of the river without watching around. But they had the other fear, that thinking that maybe there's something coming out of the river as a bad spirit or something. So how they drink was they chucked with either the paddle or with a hand. They chucked the water out like that, and then they caught it like that. That's how they drink water. And this kind of reminds me of this a little bit. So when they drank the water, so some men scooped down into their knee, and obviously they lost their watch. Being in the army, you want to look ahead and see what's going around. So they went like that. So the other ones put their head down and they were just worried about drinking. Fair call, God wanted to weed out the people that wasn't full-heartedly following. He was searching, and last time I said the same, he was searching for people. He was always, and he still is, and he's forever has searched for people who are not perfect, but they're full-hearted. None of us here, none of us in the world, none of us back then are perfect. They can't have perfect men, women, children, girls, boys, can't have them. But he can have willing, full-hearted people. And that's what he was looking for. He was looking for full-hearted people. So he, in Gideon's eyes though, so he goes 22,000 gone, 300 left. So what are the odds now? 120,000 to 300. It's ridiculous, right? But if we have God, does it matter? If you think of it that way, if you have God, does it matter? Does it matter how many? Does it matter how many are we here? Does it matter there was only 12 disciples? Does it matter? The number. It can be only one man. That was Gideon. Or there was 300. It doesn't matter. It's when God is in it. That's what matters. It's when you're full-hearted. That's what matters. I think that's, weakness to strength. That's my message. You think about it. God even put them into weaker situations so His strength can come forward. And what happens next is, if you know the story, but, we'll read on. So here he is with his 300 men and tells the other ones to give the other ones the horns and some food. and says, go back to your tents. And then, the night comes. And God talks to Gideon. And I love what he says here. Now, it's almost like he knows that he's fearful. So he says, ja sel ööl sündis, et issand ütles temale, tõuse, mine alla leeri, sest ma annan selle su kätte. Aga kui sa kardad minna, siis mine alla leeri koos oma treeneri puuraga. Like, he's now talking to him like he knows he's fearful. He's almost telling him, okay, all right, I know you're scared. Go there with your servant. Don't go alone. God now knows like his character. He's like already, he gives him encouragement here again. And what happens? What happens? And I mean, that's pretty much the third time or the fourth time he keeps telling him, actually hasn't told him yet how he's going to do it, but he's telling him to go down to the camp in the midst of these 120,000 people, like a little, spy mission, right? So imagine these two people in the middle of the night, they're spying, if you want to keep reading on, they're spying, they're going like into the camp. And just happens, exactly where they are, there are these two guards, when they go into the camp, there's these two guards who are having a discussion. One man is saying, hey, I had a dream. You know what I dreamed about? What did you dream about? I had a dream that this kairagakko, this, I don't know, what's it in English? Like a loaf of bread. I don't know. Round loaf of bread came down from the hill and it tipped over our tent and the tent was upside down. What would that mean? And the other guy, and Gideon is hearing this with his servant, and the other guy says, do you know what it means? It means Gideon is coming and he's with a sword going to kill us. Like, what are the odds? Like 120,000 people, and they meet this two people having this conversation, right? Like, this is God. And we have moments like that in our lives, let's be honest. We have moments in our lives when we take the step and we're obedient to God, and God gives us the encouragement. He gives us that person, or he gives us that, we can say a sign, we should not seek for a sign, as Jesus said, but, he gives us the, like, assurance would be the name. It's not like a sign, like, like, he gives you the assurance that this is the right thing. You're on the right path, It's just, and here he comes. Comes back up. He's all now, it's like, yeah, God approved it to me. Yep, let's go. So, he goes. Does this look like a great army to you? This looks like a trumpet choir. This is like, like this, like, we're going to Laulupidu, I mean, like, this is like a rongcake. Like it's like anyway. So the story goes, he goes and says, okay, let's take the trumpets, let's take the, I don't know, kruusid eesti keeles, like a big mugs, or I don't know what they're called, and pitchers in English, yeah. So take the pitcher, take the torches and the trumpets, and they split it into 3 lots. So there was 100, 100, 100. And here they go to battle. So they're standing, when they go to the edge of all these big army, they take the cruisers are on the top of the torches so they don't see the lights. So all of a sudden in the middle of the night, they have a surprise attack, smash the big pitchers on the ground and yell, for Gideon, for God and for Gideon. Like, and blow the trumpets. I mean, this is a sound effect, you know what I mean? Like, this is like a hologram war, you know, like they were just, in a humanly saying, obviously the 120,000 are just, what happens? They get scared. They get confused. They start fighting each other. They start fleeing. Well, is this humanly speaking like normal or possible or... No, it's a miracle. It's, you know, God did an amazing, amazing victory. And so can we have amazing victory. You know, these 120,000, they fled. They killed each other. They, you know, 300 men. What I thought about was this, that for Gideon, for like looking at, like from the Gideon perspective, if you read the story, it says here in the beginning of chapter 6, he says to God, he says that, you know, I've heard, I think it was 6th or 7th verse, he says to God, he says, I've heard all these stories, God. I've heard all the stories from my parents or from my ancestors that, you know, they came out of Egypt and God delivered you into this land. He said, I've heard it. But now, he's living it. He is doing the miraculous. So can we. God is not changing. I'm not saying go out and blow the trumpets, but I'm like we can blow the trumpet. Like as a picture of, we can share the word. As a picture of, you know, we can be bold for God. You know, we can blow the trumpet. We're not perfect. And we never will be. But has the message changed? Has the call of God changed for our life to watch and wait? Has it changed? No, hasn't changed. It's still the same. It's still exactly the same. You know, let's look at 1 Corinthians 16:13. And probably you know this verse. But this is just encouragement. 1 Corinthians 16:13. Need to get there too. In Estonian. Valvake, seiske usus, olge mehised. Maybe it's like a man verse, but olge naiselikud, you know, like it's saying to women too. Olge naiselikud, kristlikus mõttes naiselikud, olge mehised, saage tugevaks. Valvake, seiske usus, olge mehised, saage tugevaks. Ma arvan, see ei hüüd nagu seal, vaata nagu. Et nagu Jumal annab meile tugevust. God will give us the strength. He wants us to be watchful and have the strength, be manly and be strong, be courageous. You know, let's carry on the task that God has given to all of us. So it's the victory. So I'll just close with this. Let me get there, sorry. So, how do I say it in English? Why does God want us to have weaknesses? You know, looking at the story. Why the weaknesses? Well, because He wants to show Himself strong through us. He wants to have the glory. You know, if we say that we are strong, if we say, you know, I'm this or I'm that, that's not what God wants. He wants us to rely on His grace. You know, my kids are getting to that age when they say, I can't. I know I can't. Andrew, can you do this? I can't. I don't know if it's like I won't or I don't want to, but you know what I say? I said, yeah, you can. None of us can, but only by God's grace. We can. By God's grace, you can get dressed, Gracie, when Daddy asks you. Yeah? Yeah. When Daddy asks, do this, you can't, but with God's grace, when you ask, you can. We all can. We all have that weakness when you can say, God, I can't. I remember the first time when, now we go and doing the, giving our tracts and talking to people in the community. The first time, I secretly same, like I went like letterboxing around my neighborhood in Brisbane, Australia. So God brought in my heart, heard it in the church, should be, a godly man, put, witness to people. So God put, things in the letterboxes all, around my little suburb. And then I was kind of wrapping up. I had a few tracks left. God says, go talk to that man who was on a basketball court. I was like, me? Talking to someone about God? No way. I can give him a track, but me talking about God? I was petrified. Really? I was like, but I went up to him and was like, hey, how are you? And just kind of like, oh, playing basketball, yeah? Yeah. And the only thing I could do is, I just said, look, just God put in my heart just to give you this. And I just gave him the track. That's all I could do. And then I ran home. I was so scared. I was thinking like, man, this is ridiculous. I can't do this. But that's the little things that count with God. He doesn't need, we think in our minds, what about if the most famous people in Russia or here or wherever, they become Christians and then they preach the gospel to everyone. Well, you know what? That has happened. There's been Christian, kings or the presidents or, I think of people like very famous in their time like C.T. Studd or Eric Liddell. They had great talents and they had like great influence. And by the way, you know what they did? They gave it up. Eric Liddell was the fastest runner. He gave it up to, be a missionary. C.T. Studd, he was C.T. Studd? Eugene? C.T. Studd? He was a great cricketer. I mean, world famous, I think he was from England. Or was it Australia? Anyway, doesn't matter. Anyway, he had the fame. He had the money. And he just gave it all up. And became a missionary. Through him became like massive missionary movements. They gave it up. They followed God. They were soft in the heart to follow and do what God wanted them to do. And I think of us, as a church or individuals, we're not the biggest church. We can say like Gideon. Gideon said in the beginning, aren't we the least of the house of Manasseh? Aren't we the least of them? Am I not the least of my father's house? So he was the younger. He was the Andrew, he was the Johannes. He was it was like me. I think you were the older. But it was like, he was the youngest. He could play the card. They say, I'm the weakest. But didn't matter. God wanted to use him. And same with us. We're little, but we can do great things. We can, all of us individually, but also as a church. We're a little church, but we can do it great. So let's give God a chance and open our hearts and let God use us. Out of our weakness becomes strength. So last passage, Hebrews 11:32-34. That where this passage is really from. So I'll read it in Estonian. Ja mida ma veel ütlen? Mul puudub aeg jutustada Gideonist, Barakist, Simsonist, Jeftast, Taavetist, Samuelist ning prohvetitest, kes usu läbi vallutasid kuningriike, mõistsid kohut, said kätte tõotusi, sulgesid lõvide suud, kustutasid tuleväe, pääsesid pakku mõõgatera eest, said nõtrusest tugevaks ja vägevaks sõjas, tõrjusid tagasi võõraste vaenuleere. See on nagu the summary, really, of what's said there.